What if everything we think we know about the Final Fantasy VII Remake project is fundamentally backwards? What if the worlds we've spent years analyzing aren't a sprawling sci-fi epic of parallel timelines, but something far more intimate and far more terrifying? Since Rebirth dropped, we've seen some incredible analysis from the community attempting to make sense of this chaos. Creators like Subtext brilliantly pointed out the unreliable world being built around us, and John Q Gamer put forward an absolutely massive shattered planet theory, arguing that the Cetra physically split the world to trap Genova. Both videos can be found at the top of the description and are essential viewing. Those theories are fantastic, and they provide the essential groundwork for understanding the scale of what we're seeing. But what if they're looking in the wrong direction? What if we are mistaking a symptom for the cause? What if the shattered planet isn't a physical planet at all? What if the shattered planet is the shattered mind of a single, deeply traumatized soldier? Today, we are going to uncover a terrifying reality. We aren't just watching a story, we're watching a psychological breakdown. Let's start with the nature of these multiple worlds. Are they parallel physical universes? The community often defaults to this explanation because it's familiar, but I don't think so. And the devs don't think so either. It is explicitly stated in various interviews that these are not independent physical timelines, but rather worlds on different layers. But what does that actually mean? To answer that, we have to look past the sci-fi tropes and into the philosophical DNA of the series. Nojima has heavily incorporated Jungian psychology and Eastern philosophy into the compilation, specifically the Buddhist concept of Yogacara, or the mind-only philosophy. In the mind-only framework, the external physical world as we know it is an illusion. Reality is just a projection of internal seeds stored within a deeper consciousness. But what if the Lifestream isn't just a river of green goop? What if it acts as a storehouse consciousness? A massive planetary database containing every memory, emotion, and unrealized hope, just as the Cosmo Canyon NPC theorized. And what happens when a mind that is so deeply fractured by trauma is directly injected with this storehouse consciousness and refuses to accept reality? When Cloud denies Aerith's death, he doesn't just block a memory. His Marco-amplified subconscious takes that denial and plants an errant seed into the storehouse consciousness of the Lifestream. His mind literally sprouts a localized spiritual projection where she survives. The Terrier and Pug timelines aren't just alternate realities. They are the temporary symptomatic byproducts of Cloud's grief, or as Sephiroth calls them,
these errant worlds.
We aren't watching a new timeline. We are trapped inside Cloud's destabilized point of view, watching a familiar timeline undergo a psychological collapse. If you need hard proof that we're experiencing a psychological phenomenon rather than a cosmic one, look no further than the rift in the sky at the end of Rebirth. Cloud looks up and sees a massive rift tearing in the sky. The rest of the party looks up and sees a clear blue sky. Why? Because the rift isn't a celestial event. It isn't a sign that the worlds are ending, like we're told in Rebirth. It is a localized symptom, a literal tear in the fabric of Cloud's psyche. It is a visual metaphor for his forced denial, these errant seeds bleeding into the real world. But if these errant worlds are essentially a virus of denial, wouldn't the planet fight back? In order to make sense of this, I've opted to look at the world of FF7 from a biological point of view. If the Lifestream is a storehouse consciousness, the literal lifeblood of the planet, the Whispers act as its immune response, like planetary white blood cells. They exist to prune these errant seeds and keep the stream of memory pure and aligned with truth, to physically force events back onto their intended path. As seen in Remake when Sephiroth stabbed and killed Barrett, only for him to be revived by a Whisper moments later. They are literally repairing the timeline's mutations. But by merging the biological view with the Yogacara framework, the Whispers shift from being a literal external force to being a symptom of a cognitive crisis. In Yogacara philosophy, the storehouse consciousness, aka the Lifestream, contains the seeds of all potential experiences. What we perceive as an external physical reality is simply the ripening of these seeds. If the external world is a projection of internal seeds, then the whispers are the manifestation of cognitive dissonance between the planet's truth and any errant seed of denial or deviation, with Cloud's fractured mind being the most dangerous. Cloud's memory is a chaotic mix of his own trauma, Zack's legacy, Aerith's death, and the true events of Nibelheim. His fragile ego is entirely built on a lie. Therefore, the destiny the whispers are trying to enforce isn't just a cosmic timeline. It is the brutal, objective truth. The whispers are the friction of the planet forcefully trying to correct Cloud's broken mind, actively fighting his delusions before they can permanently infect the Lifestream. But when the party entered the Singularity and defeated the Harbinger at the end of Remake, everything changed. This event alone was like a second Big Bang. With the Harbinger defeated, destiny was no longer predetermined. So where does Sephiroth fit into all of this? We assume his ultimate goal, the reunion of worlds, is to become a god ruling over a physical universe. But the lore tells a different story. In Crisis Core, when Sephiroth stabs Cloud, Cloud manages to overpower him and throw him into the Lifestream. At this point, Sephiroth's physical body is dead. However, his willpower is so strong that he doesn't return to the planet, allowing his spirit to persist, locate the northern crater, and begin reconstituting a new body over several years. The Sephiroth encountered throughout the games is actually Jenova's body shapeshifting into his form, controlled by his conscious will from the crater to trigger the reunion, retrieve the black materia. Without his physical body, Sephiroth is a hollow, parasitic will. He lacks the autonomous, creative force of a natural soul to generate these stable worlds on his own. He needs Cloud. He requires Cloud's trauma to serve as the engine for his existence. By hijacking Cloud's denial, Sephiroth ensures he will, in his own words, never be a memory. The goal of the reunion becomes more than just reassembling Jenova's main body, regaining his full power, and summoning Meteor. He wants to merge Cloud's errant worlds into one permanent reality, replacing the planet's collective consciousness with his own ego. He isn't just trying to rule the cosmos, he's trying to permanently hijack Cloud's soul. If Cloud never accepts reality, Sephiroth never becomes a memory, he becomes permanent. But this parasitic relationship doesn't just exist in the mind, it manifests in the flesh. If everything we've talked about so far is true, it doesn't just explain what's going on in the remakes, it completely rewrites the biggest biological mystery in Final Fantasy VII lore: soldier degradation. What if degradation isn't a genetic flaw, but the planet's immune response kicking in? Humans aren't supposed to be pumped full of Mako, which is literally liquid storehouse consciousness. The planet's immune system violently rejects this infection, breaking down the host to reclaim its memories. We see this with Jesse's dad, who's in a coma, stuck between worlds after severe Mako exposure. His mind was overwhelmed and essentially collapsed. The difference between his case and the soldiers is the use of Jenova cells. Sephiroth's or Jenova's influence can turn something seemingly benign and symptom-free into something malignant. Jesse's dad doesn't physically decay because his Mako exposure is benign, but injects someone with Jenova cells first, and the planet has no choice but to attack the infection. We know the official lore blames degradation on the flawed G-type process versus the pure S cell, but what if we look at that exact same outcome through our mind-only framework? In Rebirth, we see characters like Broden or Roche beginning to degrade, often triggered when Hojo performs additional experiments or when their will breaks, allowing Jenova's cells to take over and turn them into mindless men in capes. But if degradation is the planet's autoimmune response, why does Jenova end up taking over the host anyway? Shouldn't the immune system wipe Jenova's cells out? This is easy to explain using our own biology. Sometimes our immune system is tricked into a negative response through a specific mechanism. One of these mechanisms will sound very familiar: molecular mimicry. Sometimes viruses or bacteria share structural similarities with your own healthy cells. This resemblance can cause the immune system to mistakenly attack host tissues, triggering autoimmunity. If there is no intervention, your cells will quite literally degrade, and in a Shinra soldier's case, leaving behind only the resilient, parasitic Jenova cells to allow Sephiroth to take complete control. So how and why do Sephiroth, Zack, and Cloud resist degradation? Sephiroth has a sovereign ego, an absolute dominating sense of self that refuses to bow to any external force. When he is exposed to the Lifestream, he doesn't drown in the planet's memories. Instead, his ego is so massively dense that he subjugates the data. He looks at the collective consciousness of the planet and says, "Mine." He retains absolute perfection because his ego allows zero room for doubt, grief, or the will of the planet. Zack has a fortified ego, a pure, unwavering, and harmonious sense of self. Zack knows exactly who he is, a hero. When Hojo pumps Zack full of Marco and Sephiroth's S cells, Zack's mind acts as a perfectly sealed, impenetrable vault. When the planet's immune system sweeps through looking for leaking or corrupted vessels to destroy, it scans Zack and finds nothing wrong. His identity is flawlessly intact. But Cloud had an empty ego, a shattered blank slate. Cloud's actual personality completely broke. By the time the Marco and Genova cells flooded his system, Cloud Strife essentially did not exist. There was no ego left to fight off the data breach. If degradation is an immune response looking for a compromised ego holding stolen data, Cloud accidentally achieved perfect camouflage. The planet's white blood cells couldn't lock onto him because there was no coherent identity to attack. But if he's perfectly camouflaged, why do we see Cloud struggle so much throughout the games? Whenever Cloud gets those headaches with the green Lifestream hue, it is my opinion that is the planet's immune system trying to scrub the Genova infection out of his brain. And when is it that Cloud gets these headaches? In moments where his identity, his sense of self, and his truth are challenged. Cloud's headaches are not only his internal battle with the truth, but with the Lifestream, the planet itself. Part 3's Lifestream sequence is the singular point where every cognitive conflict is resolved. Cloud and Tifa's conflicting narratives will end with the truth. By guiding him through his memories properly, Tifa will act as the mirror of truth. Cloud's denial of Aerith, Zack, and his mother's death will dissipate, and he will finally process reality. He will align his mind with the perfected nature of reality. The errant seeds will lose their power and dissolve. He strips Sephiroth of his anchor, starves the infection, and collapses the delusions back into a stabilized state of being. From this point on, the world we perceive as the player will be the true world, with no more of Cloud's delusions seeping in. Cloud is finally able to deal with his trauma. What once was an empty ego, a shattered blank slate, now becomes a fortified ego, a pure, unwavering, and harmonious sense of self. Living up to Zack's dying words, Cloud really is his living legacy.